Hi everyone, welcome back to Read with Ridge. In today's session, we are going to be reading a classic children's story. In this case, I am going to be reading to you the story of Hansel and Gretel. Hansel and Gretel was published in 1812 by the brothers Grimm, the same people who wrote Snow White. As you can imagine, this is a classic German story, and I really hope you can learn lots of new words and expressions in English in today's video. Without further ado, let's get started. Once upon a time, there lived two children called Hansel and Gretel. They lived with their father and their stepmother in a house in the woods. Their father was a woodcutter. The woodcutter was very poor, and he could no longer provide for his family. One night, his wife suggested that they take his children into the forest and leave them there.
We don't have enough money. We are so poor, we can't even feed ourselves. How can we feed these two mouths every day? The stepmother said. The father was feeling very sad because he didn't want to leave his two children. I've had enough of eating very little. Take the children into the forest and leave them there, and at least we can eat.
Hansel and Gretel overheard what their stepmother had said. They were very, very sad. Hansel said, "Did you hear that, Gretel? Did you hear that, Gretel?" "Yes," said Gretel. "Now we have to think of a plan, Hansel. We can't let our stepmother abandon us in the forest. What are we going to do there all on our own? We have to think of a plan." Hansel crept outside and found some white pebbles. They shone brightly in the moonlight. He filled his pocket with the pebbles and he crept back inside. The next morning, they all went for a walk in the forest. As they walked, Hansel dropped the pebbles along the path. They went further and further deep into the forest. Hansel and Gretel grew tired, so the woodcutter made a fire and told them to rest. When they awoke, they were all alone, but Hansel's plan had worked. They could follow the white pebbles back to their house. When they arrived home, the woodcutter was overjoyed. However, their stepmother was very cross. Later that night, she told the woodcutter that he must get rid of the children.
How dare these little pesky children come back? My plan was thwarted. I wanted them to get lost in the forest forever, and therefore I could eat lots of nice, delicious food again and not worry about these annoying children. So you must take the children, Mr. Woodcutter, and get rid of them.
The next day, the stepmother gave Hansel and Gretel 2 slices of bread for breakfast. They set out into the forest again. This time, they walked a lot further into the heart of the forest. As they walked along, this time, Hansel dropped breadcrumbs along the path. When the children were tired, the woodcutter told them to gather wood so he could build a fire. He told them to rest by the fire, and again they went to sleep. When they awoke, yet again, they found themselves all alone in the forest. Hansel was not worried. He told Gretel about the breadcrumbs. But when they looked along the path, they found that they had been eaten by all the birds and other animals in the forest. "Gretel, what are we going to do? The birds have eaten all the breadcrumbs." "Don't worry, Hansel. I will think of a plan. Hansel and Gretel walked and walked through the forest. Eventually they came across an amazing house. It was made of gingerbread and decorated with sweets, icing, and lollipops. Hansel and Gretel began to eat all the sweets. This is scrumptious, Gretel. Do you like it? Yes. These sweets are incredible. Wow, we haven't had sweets like this for years. However, then all of a sudden, an old woman came out of the gingerbread house. She invited them both inside. But once the children were inside, they found that the old woman was very cruel. She locked Hansel in a cage. She wanted to fatten him up and eat him.
You naughty little children, trying to eat all my sweets. Now I'm going to fatten you up. I'm going to make you as fat as a cow and eat you.
Laughed the old woman. One day the old woman showed Gretel the oven where she was going to cook Hansel. Gretel decided to trick the old woman. She told her that Hansel was too big to fit in the oven. The old woman leaned forward to take a closer look. And at that once, Gretel pushed the old woman straight into the oven. The woman was in the oven and trying to get out, and Gretel kept on pushing her back into the oven. Next, Gretel found the key to the cage and unlocked it so that Hansel could get out. They were both overjoyed. Before leaving, Hansel and Gretel had a look around the gingerbread house. They found a chest full of gold coins. They decided to bring the chest home with them. After a long walk through the forest, Hansel and Gretel eventually found a path they recognized. They ran excitedly along the path and finally saw their home in the distance. There outside the cottage was their father. Their stepmother had died. Now they had enough riches to last them for a lifetime, and they would never go hungry again. The three of them lived happily ever after. So everyone, this is all we have time for today. I hope you weren't too scared. Hansel and Gretel was always a story that made me a little bit preoccupied when I was little, because I always thought, what would happen if my mum and dad tried to get rid of me? So I really do hope this story has not been too traumatic for some of you. In any case, it's just a story, and I really hope that you enjoyed reading it with me here today. Thank you very much. If you did like the video, please give me a like. And if you want to hear more of my videos, please subscribe. And if you have any comments or questions, write them down below. Thank you very much, and see you in a new video soon.